Ayana was falling. The world spun in a kaleidoscope of rock and sky and terror as she plummeted into the ravine, her hands wrapped protectively around her 9 months pregnant belly. Once that brat finally pops out her little bastard, we can get rid of her and start our real life together. Kachana's words echoed in her mind as she tumbled through brush and stone. The image of Chetan's hands tangled in her stepsister's golden hair, their mouths fused together with desperate hunger, flashed behind her closed eyelids. The betrayal that had sent her running to the cliff in the first place now seemed like a distant nightmare compared to the immediate reality of impact. She hit the slope hard, rocks tearing at her skin. Her only thought was the baby. Protect the baby. My father's will was very specific. I inherit everything only if I'm married with a child. Ayana served her purpose. And the baby? Won't be a problem. Accidents happen. When she finally came to rest against a fallen log, everything hurt and warm wetness trickled down her temple. The memory of Chetan's cold laugh made her stomach clench, or maybe that was just another contraction seizing her, stronger than any she'd felt before. No, Ayana gasped, pressing her back against the log. Not now. Please, not now. But her water had already broken in the fall, and her body wasn't listening to her pleas. The baby was coming whether she was ready or not. She struggled to a sitting position against the log, her vision swimming. Okay, baby, she whispered, her voice shaking. Okay. We can do this. Just you and me. Time became a blur of pain and pushing and desperate prayer. Ayana lost herself in the primal rhythm of birth, every instinct focused on bringing her child safely into the world. The forest around her faded until there was only this, her body, her baby, and the fierce determination to protect what was hers. When the final push came, when the slippery weight of new life slid into her waiting hands, Ayana sobbed with relief and wonder. A girl. Perfect and pink and screaming with healthy lungs. Hello, beautiful, Ayana whispered, pulling her daughter against her chest. Hello, my brave girl. As she held her newborn daughter, the adrenaline began to fade and the memories crashed over her with devastating clarity. She'd been looking for Chetan to tell him the contractions had started early when she heard voices from the garden. Kachana's breathless laugh, then Chetan's deeper rumble. Ayana had followed the sound, thinking to invite her stepsister to come to the hospital with them. Instead, she'd found them pressed against the garden wall, Chetan's hands tangled in Kachana's golden hair as he kissed her with desperate hunger. Soon, Kachana had whispered against his mouth, her voice carrying on the evening breeze. The ritual is set for the new moon. Once that brat finally pops out her little bastard, we can get rid of her and start our real life together. Chetan's laugh had been cold, nothing like the warm sound Ayana had fallen in love with 3 years ago. My father's will was very specific. I inherit everything only if I'm married with a child. Ayana served her purpose. And the baby? Won't be a problem. Accidents happen. Ayana's world had tilted. Her hand had flown to her stomach protectively as another contraction built. The baby. They wanted to hurt her baby. She'd stumbled backward, branches catching her dark hair, her breath coming in sharp pants. Get away. Had to get away. Her feet had moved without conscious thought, muscle memory guiding her through the woods to her childhood hideaway, the cliffside overlook that had been her sanctuary whenever her stepmother's cruelty became too much. But the limestone had been loose, unstable. Always had been. That's why children were forbidden to play near the edge. The ground had simply given way beneath her feet. Ayana's arms tightened around her daughter as the memory burned through her. They'd planned to kill them both. Her and this innocent child who'd done nothing but exist. Never, she whispered fiercely to her baby. I'll never let them hurt you. She was trying to figure out how to cut the cord with no tools when she heard the growl. Low and rumbling, it seemed to come from the very earth itself. Ayana's head snapped up, every maternal instinct blazing to life. She clutched her naked, bloody daughter closer and searched the darkening forest. Yellow eyes gleamed from the shadows between the trees. Not animal eyes, too intelligent, too aware. They moved closer, and Ayana caught sight of a massive shape, human but wrong somehow. Too big, too powerful, moving with predatory grace. "Stay back," she warned, though her voice came out as barely a whisper. "Stay away from us." The shape stepped into the dim light, and Ayana's breath caught. It was a man, at least, mostly a man. Tall and broad-shouldered, with wild dark hair and those impossible golden eyes. His clothes were torn, his hands tipped with what looked like claws, and when he spoke, his voice was rough as gravel. "You're hurt." It wasn't a question. He moved closer despite her warning, and Ayana could see the concern in those inhuman eyes even as every survival instinct screamed at her to run. But she couldn't run, not with the baby, not bleeding and exhausted as she was. "Don't," she managed as he knelt beside her. "Please don't hurt her." Something shifted in his expression, surprise, maybe even pain. "I would never hurt a child." His gaze moved from the baby to Ayana's face, taking in her injuries, the blood, the way she trembled with exhaustion and fear. "What happened?" "I fell." The truth seemed too simple, too inadequate for the way her entire life had just shattered. He was close enough now that she could see the sharp angles of his face, the way his nostrils flared as if scenting her. When his eyes met hers again, something electric passed between them, recognition, claim, possession. "Mine," he said, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. Then louder, more certain, "You're both mine now." Ayana should have been terrified. This strange man with his predator's eyes and impossible presence, claiming her like some primitive throwback. But instead, she felt something settle in her chest. Safety. Protection. Home. "I don't even know your name," she whispered. "Dakota." He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movements, and when she didn't pull away, he touched her cheek with surprising gentleness. "Alpha Dakota." "And you are?" "Ayana." The word came out on a sob she hadn't expected. "Ayana Blackfeather." "Ayana." He said her name like a prayer, like a promise. "No one will hurt you again. No one will touch what's mine." His hands were gentle as he helped her settle more comfortably against the log, but Ayana could feel the leashed power in them. The barely controlled violence that would unleash itself on anyone who threatened her or her daughter. She should have been afraid of him. Instead, as consciousness began to fade from blood loss and exhaustion, Ayana found herself leaning into that promised protection. For the first time in hours, maybe years, she felt safe. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Dakota's golden eyes, fierce and possessive and utterly devoted, watching over them both like the predator he clearly was. "Mine," his eyes seemed to say again. And despite everything, Chaitan's betrayal, Kachina's treachery, the fall that could have killed them both, Ayana found herself thinking, yes. Chapter 2. Ayana woke to the sound of her daughter crying and the scent of pine and something wild she couldn't name. Her eyes snapped open to find herself in a bed that wasn't hers, in a room built of rough-hewn logs and stone. Panic shot through her as the memories crashed back, the fall, the birth, the golden-eyed stranger who'd claimed them both. Where was her baby? "She's hungry." Ayana's head whipped toward the deep voice. Dakota sat in a wooden chair beside the bed, her daughter cradled against his massive chest with surprising gentleness. The baby looked impossibly small in his arms, but she wasn't crying anymore. She was staring up at him with the unfocused attention newborns gave to faces. "Give her to me." Ayana struggled to sit up, her body protesting every movement. How long had she been unconscious? "Easy, little mate." Dakota rose smoothly and placed the baby in her arms. "You've been sleeping for 2 days. Your body needed time to heal. Little mate." The endearment sent an unwelcome shiver down her spine. Ayana focused on her daughter instead, pulling down her shirt to nurse. The baby latched on immediately, and Ayana finally allowed herself to breathe. "Where are we?" she asked, not looking at him. "My home. Our home now. Our home." Ayana's head snapped up. "This isn't my home. I need to get back to..." "To what?" Takota's voice was deceptively quiet, but his golden eyes had gone hard. To the life where your fiancé and stepsister planned to sacrifice your child? To the people who would have let you both die? The words hit like physical blows. Ayana clutched her daughter closer, the memory of Chaitan's cold laugh echoing in her mind. You don't understand. I can't just disappear. People will look for me. Let them look. There was something final in his tone that made Ayana's blood run cold. She studied his face, the sharp angles, the predatory stillness that reminded her he wasn't entirely human. You can't keep me here. I can do whatever is necessary to protect what's mine. I'm not yours. Takota moved so fast she barely saw him coming. One moment he was standing across the room, the next he was beside the bed, his hand cupping her face with gentle firmness. His thumb traced her cheek, and Ayana hated the way her pulse jumped at the touch. You became mine the moment I found you bleeding and broken in those woods, he said softly. The moment you looked at me with those dark eyes and trusted me to keep you safe. You can fight it all you want, little mate, but you feel it too. Ayana did feel it, the inexplicable pull toward this dangerous stranger, the way her body responded to his proximity despite every rational thought screaming at her to run. But she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of admitting it. I feel grateful, she said carefully. You saved our lives. But gratitude isn't ownership. Takota's smile was sharp and knowing. We'll see. He pulled his hand away, and Ayana immediately missed the warmth. That realization terrified her more than his words. I've prepared food for you, he said, moving toward the door. You need to keep your strength up for the baby. Wait. Ayana's voice stopped him at the threshold. What is this place? Who are you really? I'm the alpha of the North Mountain Pack, he said without turning around. And this is our territory. You're under my protection now, which means you're safe from anyone who might want to hurt you or your daughter. Even from you? He looked back then, his golden eyes intense. I would die before I let harm come to either of you. But that doesn't mean I'll let you go. After he left, Ayana sat in the silence, her daughter warm and content in her arms. Through the window, she could see thick forest stretching as far as the eye could see. No roads, no houses, no sign of civilization. Just wilderness and whatever creatures called it home. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A woman peered around the door, tall and athletic with copper hair and shrewd green eyes. May I come in? The woman asked. I'm Tala, the pack's healer. Ayana nodded, grateful for another female presence. Tala entered carrying a tray of food that smelled incredible and made Ayana's stomach growl loudly. Takota said you might be hungry, Tala said with a small smile. How are you feeling? Like I fell off a cliff, Ayana said honestly, then winced at her own words. Tala's expression softened. You're lucky to be alive. That was quite a fall, and to deliver a healthy baby after, well, it's nothing short of miraculous. Takota told you what happened? He told us enough. Tala set the tray on the bedside table and helped Ayana arrange pillows behind her back. Ayana, I need you to understand something about our alpha. He's not a man who makes claims lightly. When he says you're his mate, he means it in every sense of the word. I don't even know what that means. It means you're bound to him now, whether you realize it or not. It means he'll protect you with his life, provide for you, cherish you. Tala paused. But it also means he'll never let you go. Ayana's appetite disappeared. What if I want to leave? Tala's green eyes held sympathy and something else, warning. Then you'll learn just how possessive a wolf can be about his mate. Takota's been patient so far because you're recovering, but that patience won't last forever. The longer you fight the bond, the more intense he'll become. Bond? What bond? I didn't agree to anything. The mate bond doesn't require your agreement, Tala said gently. It simply is. Takota recognized you as his the moment he saw you. And whether you admit it or not, part of you recognized him too. Ayana wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. There had been something in that moment when their eyes met, recognition, possession, homecoming. Something that bypassed her rational mind entirely. There's something else you should know, Tala continued, her voice dropping. Some of the pack aren't happy about Dakota's choice. They see you as human, as weak. They think you'll make him vulnerable. And what do you think? Tala studied her for a long moment. I think you survived a fall that should have killed you, delivered a baby alone in the wilderness, and looked an alpha werewolf in the eye without flinching. I don't think weakness is your problem. After Tala left, Ayana tried to eat, but her mind was spinning. Mates. Bonds. A pack that might see her as a threat. And underneath it all, the growing awareness that her body responded to Dakota in ways that had nothing to do with gratitude. She was still picking at her food when Dakota returned, carrying a bundle of clothes. I thought you might want something clean to wear, he said, setting them on the bed. Thank you. Ayana hesitated, then forced herself to ask. Have there been people looking for me? Something flickered in Dakota's expression. Your fiancé has been very vocal about his concern. He's organized search parties, spoken to the police. Quite the devoted lover, by all appearances. The sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable. Ayana's stomach clenched. Chayton's looking for me? Desperately, from what I hear. Dakota's golden eyes fixed on her face. Tell me, little mate, if he loved you so much, why were you running through the woods alone while in labor? Ayana's throat tightened. Because he didn't love her. Because she'd been nothing but a means to an end, a vessel for the child that would secure his inheritance. Because he'd been planning to kill them both. He's probably worried about the baby, she whispered. I'm sure he is. Dakota's voice was soft and dangerous. But not for the reasons you think. The truth of it settled in her chest like a stone. Chayton wasn't searching for her out of love, he was searching because she'd escaped before he could carry out his plan. She and her daughter were still a threat to whatever twisted scheme he and Kachina had concocted. You're safe here, Dakota said, reading her expression with unsettling accuracy. Neither of them will ever touch you or your child again. I give you my word. Ayana believed him. That was the most terrifying part of all. Chapter 3. Ayana woke to find Dakota's hands on her bare skin. She'd been dreaming of fire and golden eyes when the fever spiked, and now he was pressing a cool cloth to her forehead, his touch both gentle and possessive. In the dim morning light filtering through the windows, he looked more predator than man, all sharp angles and barely leashed power. Your body is fighting an infection from the fall, he murmured, his voice rough with concern. I need to check your wounds. Ayana should have protested when his hands skimmed along her ribs, searching for signs of injury. Should have pulled away when his fingers traced the cuts on her shoulder with clinical precision. Instead, she found herself arching into his touch, craving the warmth that seemed to radiate from his skin. Better, he said, satisfaction coloring his tone. You're healing faster than I expected. Dakota. Her voice came out breathier than she intended. About what you said before, about my baby being valuable for rituals. What did you mean? His hands stilled on her skin. When he looked at her, his golden eyes held an intensity that made her breath catch. Your daughter carries markers in her blood that are extremely rare, he said carefully. Old magic. The kind that certain people would kill for. What kind of markers? The kind that can amplify supernatural power. His thumb brushed across her pulse point, and Ayana's heart rate spiked. Chayton and your stepsister weren't just planning to kill you for an inheritance, little mate. They were planning to use your baby's blood in a ritual that would give them abilities beyond their wildest dreams. The room tilted. Ayana gripped his wrist, needing something solid to anchor her. How could they know about markers? They're not supernatural. No, but they have friends who are. Dakota's expression darkened. The kind of friends who practice blood magic. Before Ayana could process that revelation fully, the door burst open. A woman stalked in without invitation, tall and stunning with platinum blonde hair and predatory grace. Her ice-blue eyes swept the room with obvious displeasure before settling on Ayana with undisguised hostility. "So this is the precious human everyone's talking about," the woman said, her voice dripping disdain. "I have to say, Dakota, I expected more." "Chenoa." Dakota's tone held warning. "You weren't invited. Since when do I need an invitation to see my alpha?" Chenoa moved closer to the bed, and Ayana caught the subtle scent of wildness and danger that seemed to cling to her. Especially when he's making such interesting choices. Ayana felt the tension crackling between them and suddenly understood. This woman wasn't just Pac, she was history. Personal history that involved tangled sheets and territorial claims. "You're alpha?" Ayana found her voice, looking between them. "I thought you said." "Oh, didn't he tell you?" Chenoa's smile was sharp as a blade. "We were together for years. I was supposed to be his mate until you showed up with your little bastard and your bleeding heart sob story." "Chenoa." Dakota's voice had gone deadly quiet. "Leave. Now." "Why?" "So you can continue playing house with this worthless human while real Pac business suffers?" Chenoa's eyes flashed with inhuman light. "The Blood Moon Coven is moving against our territory, and you're too busy playing nursemaid to notice." "I said leave." The command in his voice made Ayana's bones vibrate. But Chenoa just laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "You think she'll choose you when she realizes what you really are? When she sees you change, sees you kill?" Chenoa leaned closer to Ayana, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Ask him about the last human who thought she could handle life with a werewolf alpha. Ask him what happened to her." "Enough." Dakota was on his feet, and Ayana could see the barely controlled violence in every line of his body. "Touch her, and I'll tear your throat out." Chenoa straightened, her expression shifting to something almost victorious. "And there it is. The proof that she's made you weak. The old Dakota would have challenged me to fight for the right to question his choices. This version threatens Pac members over a human's hurt feelings." She was gone before Dakota could respond, leaving behind the scent of danger and the echo of uncomfortable truths. "Who was she talking about?" Ayana asked quietly. "The other human?" Dakota turned back to her, his expression carefully controlled. "Someone who couldn't handle what I am." "What happened to her?" "She left." The words were clipped, final. "And she was smart to do it." Ayana wanted to press, but something in his tone warned her off. Instead, she watched as he moved around the room, checking the windows, the door, suddenly every inch the predator Chenoa had accused him of forgetting to be. "The fever's broken," he said without looking at her. "You should rest." "Dakota, wait." Ayana caught his hand as he passed the bed. The contact sent electricity shooting up her arm, and from the way his pupils dilated, he felt it too. "Thank you. For taking care of me, for protecting my daughter. I know I haven't been grateful. Gratitude isn't what I want from you." His fingers intertwined with hers, thumb tracing patterns on her palm that made her shiver. "It never was." "Then what do you want?" He leaned down, his face inches from hers, close enough that she could feel his breath against her lips. "Everything." The single word hung between them, loaded with promise and threat in equal measure. Ayana's heart hammered against her ribs as Dakota's free hand cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her lower lip. "I want your trust," he continued, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. "Your submission. Your body responding to mine the way it was meant to. I want you to stop fighting what we both know is inevitable." "Dakota." Ayana's protest died as he leaned closer, his mouth hovering just above hers. "Say my name again," he commanded softly. "Dakota." He was about to kiss her, she could see the intent in his golden eyes, feel the heat radiating from his body, when the sound of engines roaring up the mountain road shattered the moment. Dakota's head snapped up, his entire body going rigid with sudden tension. A growl rumbled in his chest as he moved to the window, and Ayana saw his hands curl into claws. "What is it?" she asked, though part of her already knew. Your devoted fiancé, Dakota said, his voice gone cold and dangerous. He's found you. Through the window, Ayanna could see the convoy of vehicles winding up the narrow mountain road, SUVs and trucks filled with what looked like armed men. Chayton's desperate search had led him here, to this sanctuary that was about to become a battlefield. How many? Ayanna whispered. 12 men. Armed. Dakota's expression was calculating, predatory. They think they can take you from me. The possessive fury in his voice made Ayanna's blood run cold. She'd seen what Dakota was capable of when protecting her, gentle hands that could turn deadly in an instant. But this was different. This was jealousy and territorial rage given supernatural strength. They don't know what you are, she said, understanding with terrible clarity what was about to happen. Dakota's smile was all teeth and violence. No. They don't. Ayanna watched in horror as Chayton's truck pulled into the clearing below, her former fiancé stepping out with the confidence of a man who believed he held all the cards. He had no idea he'd just walked into the territory of an alpha werewolf who considered Ayanna his mate. He had no idea he was about to become prey. Chapter 4. Ayanna's blood turned to ice when she heard Chayton's voice calling her name from the clearing below. Ayanna. Ayanna, sweetheart, please. We know you're here. We just want to bring you and the baby home safely. He sounded exactly like the man she'd fallen in love with, concerned, desperate, heartbroken. If she hadn't witnessed his cold planning of their murders, she might have believed the performance. Dakota stood at the window like a statue carved from stone and violence, his golden eyes tracking the movements below. Ayanna could see the tension radiating through his shoulders, the barely leashed predator waiting to strike. Don't go down there, she whispered, clutching her sleeping daughter closer. Please. Just let them leave. They won't leave without what they came for. His voice was deadly quiet. They can't afford to. Ayanna. Another voice joined Chayton's, Kachina, her tone pitched perfectly between sisterly concern and maternal worry. Please, we're so sorry. We had a fight, that's all. Chayton's been out of his mind with worry. Ayanna's stomach churned at the lies, at how easily they played their parts. How long had they been planning this? How long had she been living with killers? I have to hand it to them, Dakota said, his lips curving in a smile that held no warmth. They're committed to the act. You don't understand. Chayton can be very convincing. What if your pack believes him? What if they think you should give me back? Dakota turned from the window, and the look in his eyes made Ayanna's breath catch. There was nothing human in that gaze, only the alpha wolf who had claimed her as his own. Let me worry about my pack, he said, moving toward the door. Stay here. Keep the door locked. No matter what you hear, don't come out until I return. Dakota, wait. But he was already gone, moving with that predatory grace that reminded Ayanna exactly what he was. She pressed her face to the window and watched as he emerged from the cabin below, his pack materializing from the forest around him like wraiths. Tala was there, along with 6 others Ayanna hadn't met, all of them positioning themselves between the intruders and the main compound. Chayton stepped forward, his hands raised in what looked like a peaceful gesture. Even from a distance, Ayanna could see the relief that crossed his features when he spotted Dakota. Thank God, Chayton called out. Are you the one who found my fiancé? Is she hurt? Please, I just need to know she and the baby are safe. Your fiancé? Dakota's voice carried clearly in the mountain air, deceptively casual. Interesting choice of words. Ayanna watched Chayton's posture shift slightly, some primal instinct warning him that he was facing something dangerous. But Kachina stepped up beside him, her hand on his arm in a show of united concern. Please, Kachina said, her voice breaking with perfectly crafted emotion. Ayanna is like a sister to me. She was so upset after our argument, and with the pregnancy, we're terrified something happened to her. What argument? Dakota asked. Ayanna saw Chayton and Kachina exchange a quick glance. They hadn't expected questions. Just family drama, Chayton said smoothly. Wedding stress, you know how it is. Ayana can be emotional, especially lately. Emotional. Dakota repeated the word like he was tasting something foul. Tell me, Chayton, is that what you call it when a woman overhears her fiancé and stepsister planning her murder? The silence that followed was deafening. Ayana watched Chayton's face cycle through confusion, denial, and then cold calculation in the span of seconds. I'm sorry, Chayton said carefully. I think there's been some misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, Dakota interrupted, is thinking you could come into my territory and lie to my face. He took a step forward, and Ayana could see the way Chayton's men tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. I know exactly who you are, Chayton Whitehawk. I know about your association with the Blood Moon Coven. I know about the ritual you've been planning for the new moon. Kachina went white as death. Chayton's mask finally slipped, revealing the cold predator beneath. You have no idea what you're interfering with, Chayton said, his voice losing all pretense of concern. That child belongs to me. Legally and otherwise. Legally, perhaps. Dakota's smile was pure predator. But we're not operating under human law here. Look, Chayton said, his tone shifting to negotiation. I don't know what Ayana's told you, but she's not well. Postpartum depression, paranoid delusions. The baby needs proper medical care, and Ayana needs psychiatric help. Ayana's hands clenched into fists. The lies came so easily to him, so smoothly crafted to make her sound unstable and unreliable. The baby was born during the eclipse 3 nights ago, Dakota said conversationally. Rare timing for a birth. Some might say, supernaturally significant. This time, Chayton couldn't hide his reaction. His eyes flashed with greed and hunger before he could control his expression. I don't know what you're talking about, Chayton said, but the words lacked conviction. Don't you? Dakota tilted his head. Eclipse-born children carry power in their blood. The kind of power that certain cults believe grants immortality when consumed in the right ritual. The kind of power that could make a desperate man very wealthy if he knew the right buyers. Kachina broke first. Chayton, we need to go. Now. But Chayton was past the point of retreat. Ayana could see it in the set of his shoulders, the way his hands curled into fists. That child is mine, Chayton snarled, dropping all pretense. I paid for it with 3 years of my life, playing the devoted fiancé to that pathetic little nobody. The ritual requires the father's consent, and I'm the only father that matters. Are you? Dakota's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than a shout. Because from where I stand, you're nothing but a dead man who doesn't know it yet. Give me my child. Chayton roared, pulling a gun from his jacket. Ayana. I know you can hear me. Bring me what's mine, or I'll kill every last one of these freaks. That's when Dakota's humanity died. Ayana watched in horrified fascination as the alpha threw back his head and howled, a sound of pure rage and territorial fury that made her bones vibrate. The pack responded instantly, their own howls echoing through the forest as they began to shift. She carries my scent now, Dakota said, his voice distorting as his body began to change. She's mine, the child is mine, and if you take one step closer, I'll tear your throat out. Chayton fired his gun, but Dakota was already moving, no longer entirely human. The bullet went wide as Chayton stumbled backward, finally understanding the magnitude of his mistake. What the hell? Chayton's words cut off in a scream as Dakota's partially shifted form slammed into him, sending them both tumbling across the clearing. Ayana pressed her hand to her mouth, watching the man who had planned to kill her daughter face the consequences of threatening an alpha's mate. Chayton's men were shouting, firing their weapons at shapes that moved too fast to track. Kachina was screaming, running for the trucks as chaos erupted around her. And through it all, Ayana felt a terrible sense of rightness. This was justice. This was protection. This was what it meant to belong to something powerful enough to keep her and her baby safe. Chayton's screams echoed across the mountain, and Ayana realized with crystal clarity that her choice had already been made. Not by logic or morality or even attraction, but by the simple reality of survival. The devil she knew had come to kill her child. The alpha who owned her was willing to die protecting them both. Ayana held her daughter closer and waited for the screaming to stop. Chapter 5. Ayana's scream pierced the night as Takota's teeth sank into the tender flesh where her neck met her shoulder. The pain was immediate and shocking, but what followed was worse, pleasure so intense it bordered on torture, coursing through her veins like liquid fire. Her body arched against his, every nerve ending suddenly alive and singing with a connection she didn't understand and hadn't consented to. "What have you done?" she gasped when he finally released her, his tongue laving the wound with gentle strokes that sent aftershocks through her entire system. Takota pulled back, his golden eyes blazing with satisfaction and something primal that made her blood race. "I've made sure no one can ever take you from me again." The marking had happened so fast. One moment they'd been standing on the cabin's porch, watching Chaitan's broken body being loaded into the medical examiner's van while police swarmed the compound. The next, Takota had spun her around, pressed her against the wall, and claimed her with teeth and possession and an ancient magic that rewrote her very DNA. "You bit me," Ayana said, her voice shaking with fury and something else she didn't want to name. "You actually bit me like some kind of animal." "I am an animal," Takota said calmly, his hands still spanning her waist, keeping her trapped between his body and the wall. "And now, so are you." Ayana's hand flew to the wound, feeling the raised marks of his teeth already beginning to heal with supernatural speed. But it was more than just physical, she could feel him now, sense his emotions like an echo in her mind. His satisfaction, his possessive joy, his absolute certainty that he'd done the right thing. "I didn't agree to this," she whispered. "You would have," he said with maddening confidence. "Eventually." "That's not the point." Ayana shoved against his chest, but he didn't budge. "You can't just claim someone without their permission. I can when that someone is my mate and there are people trying to kill her." His thumb traced the edge of the bite mark, and Ayana had to bite back a moan at the sensation. "The bond will protect you now. It will let me find you anywhere, feel when you're in danger, share my strength with you." "And what does it do to me?" Ayana demanded. Takota's smile was sharp and knowing. "It makes you mine. Completely, irrevocably mine." As if to prove his point, her body responded to his proximity with a hunger that horrified her. She wanted to press closer, to tilt her head and give him better access to her throat, to submit to whatever he wanted from her. The urge was so strong it made her shake. "I hate you," she whispered. "No," Takota said softly, leaning down to brush his lips against the mark he'd made. "You hate that you want me." Before Ayana could respond, footsteps on the porch announced Tala's arrival. The healer took one look at Ayana's disheveled appearance and the fresh bite mark on her neck and stopped dead. "Takota," Tala breathed. "Tell me you didn't." "I did what was necessary," Takota said, not moving away from Ayana. "The human authorities will be asking questions about Chaitan's death. They'll want to interview Ayana, possibly take her into protective custody." "I won't allow that." "You mated her without the pack's consent," Tala said, her voice tight with disbelief. "Without even asking the council. I don't need anyone's permission to claim my mate." Tala's gaze shifted to Ayana, taking in her flushed skin and dilated pupils. "How do you feel? Any nausea, dizziness, unusual sensations?" "I feel like I've been drugged," Ayana admitted. Everything seemed heightened, colors more vivid, sounds sharper, Takota's scent intoxicating in a way that made her want to bury her face in his neck. "That's the bond settling," Tala explained gently. "It will be intense for the first few days as your bodies adjust to each other." "Bodies?" Ayana's voice came out as a squeak. "The mate bond links you physically as well as emotionally," Tala said. "You'll crave his touch, his presence. Being apart will be uncomfortable." "For how long?" Tala and Takota exchanged a look. "Permanently," Tala said softly. Ayana felt the world tilt. "You mean I'll always feel like this? Always need him?" "The intensity will fade," Takota said, his hand moving to cup her face with surprising gentleness. But the connection is permanent. We're bound now, little mate. Forever. The endearment that had once annoyed her now sent shivers down her spine. Ayana closed her eyes, fighting the urge to lean into his touch. The pack won't like this, Tala warned. You've never shown interest in a permanent mate before. Some will see this as weakness, others as favoritism toward humans. Let them try to challenge me, Dakota said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. As if summoned by their conversation, Chenoa appeared at the edge of the porch light. Her ice-blue eyes immediately zeroed in on the bite mark on Ayana's neck, and her beautiful face twisted with such rage that Ayana instinctively pressed closer to Dakota. You mated her, Chenoa snarled. You actually mated that worthless human. Careful, Dakota warned, his arm tightening around Ayana's waist. Careful? Chenoa laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. I've been careful for 5 years, Dakota. Careful and patient and loyal while you played at being untouchable. And this is what I get? You throw away everything we had for some weak little breeder who can't even shift. We never had anything, Dakota said coldly. You were convenient, nothing more. Chenoa flinched as if he'd struck her. When she spoke again, her voice was deadly quiet. You'll regret this. Both of you. She vanished into the darkness before anyone could respond, but Ayana felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. The hatred in Chenoa's eyes promised trouble. She's dangerous, Ayana said. She's pack, Dakota replied. She'll fall in line. Tala looked doubtful but said nothing. Instead, she checked Ayana's bite mark one more time and advised rest before departing. Dakota led Ayana back inside, his hand never leaving her back, and Ayana realized with growing alarm that even that simple touch was enough to send heat pooling low in her belly. This is insane, she muttered, pacing the length of the bedroom while Dakota watched with predatory stillness. I can barely think straight. Every time you touch me, I feel like I'm going to combust. The bond recognizes what your mind is fighting, Dakota said. We're meant to be together, Ayana. This just makes it impossible to deny. By taking away my choice. By showing you the truth. Ayana wanted to argue, but another wave of need crashed over her, so intense she had to grip the dresser for support. Dakota was beside her in an instant, his hands on her shoulders, and the relief of his touch was so profound she nearly sobbed. Easy, he murmured, pulling her against his chest. Don't fight it so hard. It only makes it worse. I don't want this, Ayana whispered against his shirt. Your body says otherwise. And it did. God help her, it did. Even now, furious and violated and terrified, she wanted nothing more than to let him strip away her clothes and claim her completely. The bite mark on her neck throbbed with each heartbeat, a constant reminder of her new reality. How long until it gets easier, she asked. The intensity? A few days. But Ayana. Dakota tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his golden gaze. You'll always crave me now. Just as I'll always crave you. That's what it means to be mated. That night, Ayana lay awake in Dakota's arms, her body finally calm from his proximity but her mind racing. She could feel him even in sleep, his contentment, his protective instincts, his absolute satisfaction at having bound her to him. It should have been invasive, terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. She was still wrestling with that realization when the first prickle of wrongness touched her consciousness. Something was out there in the forest, moving through the pack's territory with stealthy purpose. Multiple somethings, spreading out in a coordinated pattern that spoke of military precision. Ayana sat up, her heart racing. Dakota. He was awake instantly, his eyes already shifting to wolf gold. What is it? There's something wrong. People in the forest, moving toward the compound. Dakota rolled out of bed with fluid grace, already reaching for his clothes. How many? I don't know. 6, maybe 8. They're trying to stay hidden. The bond, Dakota said with grim satisfaction. You're sensing threats to the pack territory. Ayana focused harder, following the strange new sense that had awakened with the mating mark. They're armed. And they smell wrong. Like death and old blood. Takota's expression went deadly. Cultists. Kachina's people. As if to confirm his words, Ayana caught a familiar scent among the intruders, sulfur and corruption, and something that made her skin crawl. The same scent she'd noticed around Kachina in the days before her fall. How did they find us? Ayana asked. Takota's phone buzzed with an incoming text. When he read it, his face went cold with fury. He showed Ayana the screen. Enjoyed your little mating ceremony. The human and her spawn belong to us. We'll be collecting them soon. A friend. Chenoa, Ayana breathed, understanding flooding through her. She told them about the marking. She betrayed the pack, Takota snarled, his control slipping enough that his canines elongated. For jealousy and spite, she's betrayed everything. Outside, a howl echoed through the night, the pack's warning call. The compound was under attack, and this time, the enemy knew exactly what they were facing. Ayana's hand flew to her neck, where the mating mark pulsed with each rapid heartbeat. The bond that had felt like a violation now felt like her only lifeline. Whatever was coming, whatever Kachina's cult had planned, she and Takota would face it together. Whether she'd chosen it or not, she was his now. And that might be the only thing that could save them all. Chapter 6. Ayana woke to the sound of her daughter screaming and the scent of strangers in her sanctuary. The new moon had stolen the pack's strength, leaving them vulnerable as ordinary humans while their enemies moved through the compound like shadows made flesh. Ayana's heart hammered against her ribs as she realized the crib beside the bed was empty, her baby's cries echoing from somewhere deeper in the cabin. Takota. She reached for him, but his side of the bed was cold, the sheets torn and bloody. Ayana rolled out of bed, her bare feet hitting the floor as another scream pierced the night, not her daughter's this time, but a man's death cry from outside. Through the window, she could see muzzle flashes and dark shapes moving between the trees. The compound was under siege. Her mating mark burned like fire, flooding her with sensations that weren't her own. Takota's rage, his pain, his desperate fury as he fought with nothing but human strength against enemies who had come prepared for war. She could feel him weakening, feel the moment a blade found its mark between his ribs. No, Ayana whispered, then louder, no. Her daughter's cries grew more distant, moving away from the cabin toward the forest. Ayana grabbed the first weapon she could find, Takota's hunting knife from the nightstand, and ran for the door. The main room was a war zone. Furniture overturned, windows shot out, blood splattered across the walls. 3 bodies lay sprawled on the floor, 2 cult members in dark tactical gear and Tala, the pack healer, her throat torn open. Ayana's vision went red. These monsters had killed Tala. They'd taken her baby. They'd hurt Takota. They were all going to die. The thought came with a knowledge that wasn't hers, pack memories flowing through the mating bond like water through a broken dam. She knew how to move silently, how to track by scent, how to kill quickly and efficiently. Takota's predatory instincts merged with her maternal fury, creating something deadly and new. Ayana slipped out the back door, following her daughter's scent and the sound of retreating footsteps. The new moon had stolen the pack's supernatural abilities, but it couldn't touch the bond between mates. Through Takota, she could sense every pack member's location, every enemy's position, the tactical situation spreading across the compound. Most of the pack was down. The attack had been surgical, precise, targeting the strongest fighters first. Chenoa's betrayal had given the cult every advantage, knowledge of patrol routes, defensive positions, individual weaknesses. Ayana found the first cultist crouched behind a storage shed, speaking into a radio. Package secured. Moving to extraction point 2. Package. They called her daughter a package. Ayana moved like a ghost, the way Takota's memories taught her. One hand over the man's mouth, the knife sliding between his ribs with surgical precision. He died without a sound, and Ayana felt nothing but cold satisfaction. Her daughter's cries were growing fainter, moving toward the old logging road that wound down the mountain. Ayana stripped the dead cultist of his radio and tactical vest, then melted back into the shadows. Alpha down, a voice crackled through the radio. Repeat, Alpha down. Heavy bleeding, multiple wounds. Ayana's knees nearly buckled as Takoda's pain crashed through the bond. He was dying. She could feel his life force ebbing, his heartbeat growing weaker with each passing second. But he was still fighting. Even wounded, even weakened by the new moon, he was tearing through enemies with human hands and inhuman fury. Ayana felt his berserker rage like a wildfire in her blood, felt the moment his self-control finally snapped completely. The screams that followed weren't human. Jesus Christ, another voice gasped over the radio. What the hell is that thing? It's not shifting, but it's, oh God, it's ripping them apart. Ayana smiled grimly as she moved through the forest, tracking her baby's scent. Let them fear him. Let them understand what they'd awakened when they touched his maiden child. She found the second extraction team at the logging road, loading a crying bundle into the back of a black SUV. Ayana counted 4 cultists, all armed, all focused on their prize. Through the bond, she could feel Takoda's knowledge flowing into her, pressure points, weak spots, kill zones. Her human body might lack supernatural strength, but fury and desperation were powerful equalizers. The first cultist never saw her coming. Ayana dropped from a tree branch onto his shoulders, driving her knife into the base of his skull. She rolled away from his falling body and threw the blade in one fluid motion, catching the second man in the throat. Contact. Contact. The third cultist raised his rifle, but Ayana was already moving, using the SUV as cover. The pack's tactical knowledge flooded her mind, angles of attack, fields of fire, how to use the enemy's position against them. She came around the vehicle low and fast, sweeping the gunman's legs and sending him crashing to the ground. Her knee found his windpipe before he could recover. The fourth cultist had her baby. Ayana rose slowly, her hands bloody, her eyes fixed on the woman holding her daughter. The cultist was young, maybe 20, with the pale, hollow look of someone who'd seen too much death. Stay back, the woman warned, pressing a knife to the baby's throat. One more step and I'll. Ayana moved faster than thought, the mating bond lending her Takoda's predatory speed. Her hand closed around the cultist's wrist, twisting until bones snapped and the knife clattered to the ground. The woman screamed, but Ayana was already taking her daughter, already checking for injuries with hands that shook despite her earlier steadiness. The baby was unharmed but terrified, her tiny fists waving frantically. Ayana gathered her close, breathing in her sweet scent, letting relief wash through her for exactly 3 seconds. Then the radio crackled again. Primary extraction failed. Initiating backup protocol. Kachina, you're clear to proceed with the emergency ritual site. Ayana's blood chilled. Kachina was here. And they had a backup plan. She rifled through the cultist's gear, finding maps marked with locations throughout the forest. 3 sites were circled in red: primary, secondary, and tertiary ritual locations. The primary site had been crossed out, but the secondary was marked with fresh ink and today's date. Ayana memorized the location, then stripped what she needed from the dead cultists: ammunition, a tactical radio, a GPS device. Her daughter's cries had subsided to exhausted whimpers, but Ayana couldn't risk taking her back to the compound. Not with Takoda wounded, not with the pack scattered. Through the bond, she could feel him calling for her, desperate to know she was safe. But she could also feel his injuries, the knife wound between his ribs, the bullet in his shoulder, the blood loss weakening him with every heartbeat. He couldn't save their daughter. Not this time. It's okay, baby girl, Ayana whispered against her daughter's downy hair. Mama's going to fix this. The radio crackled with updates as Ayana melted back into the forest. The cult was regrouping at the secondary site, preparing for a dawn ritual. They thought they had time, thought the pack was broken. They were wrong. Ayana Blackfeather had been a frightened human woman when this began. Chaiden's victim, Takoda's claimed mate, someone who needed saving. But that woman was gone, burned away in the crucible of betrayal and battle. What remained was something harder, darker, infinitely more dangerous. She was a mother whose child had been threatened. A mate whose bond partner was dying. A woman who'd tasted violence and found she had a gift for it. Ayana adjusted the tactical vest, checked her weapons, and began moving toward the ritual site with lethal purpose. Behind her, Takota's howls of rage and pain echoed through the forest, but she didn't look back. Her daughter's life depended on what happened in the next hour. And Ayana had finally accepted the truth Takota had been trying to show her all along. Sometimes, the only way to protect what you love is to become the monster others fear. She was done being prey. The hunt was on. Chapter 7. Ayana watched through the rifle scope as Kachina raised the ceremonial dagger above her daughter's tiny body. The ritual site was a clearing deep in the forest, lit by torches arranged in a perfect circle around an ancient stone altar. 13 cult members stood in black robes, chanting words in a language that made Ayana's skin crawl. At the center of it all, Kachina held Ayana's baby like an offering to whatever dark gods they served. Ayana's finger caressed the trigger. One shot, perfectly placed, and Kachina would die before the blade could fall. But there were too many other cultists, too many variables. Her daughter needed her alive and close, not bleeding out from a distance. The mating bond pulsed with Takota's pain and fury, his desperate need to reach them both. He was coming, following their scent trail through the forest, but he was wounded and weak and might not arrive in time. Ayana would have to be enough. She slipped from her perch in the trees, moving through the underbrush with predatory silence. The tactical knowledge flowing through her bond with Takota had transformed her into something lethal, something perfectly suited for hunting in darkness. Brothers and sisters, Kachina's voice rang across the clearing, tonight we claim our destiny. For too long, we have been bound by mortal limitations, slaves to age and death and decay. But the Eclipse child's blood will set us free. Ayana crept closer, close enough to see her daughter's face scrunched in terrified crying. Close enough to see the mad fervor in Kachina's eyes as she continued her speech. I have worked for 3 years to bring us to this moment, Kachina said, her voice gaining strength. 3 years of seducing Chayton Whitehawk, of playing the devoted stepsister to that pathetic Ayana Blackfeather. 3 years of careful planning to ensure the child would be conceived at precisely the right time, born under precisely the right celestial conditions. Ayana's blood turned to ice. 3 years. Kachina had been planning this since before Ayana had even met Chayton. The timing had to be perfect, Kachina continued, raising the dagger higher. The eclipse birth, the new moon sacrifice, all of it orchestrated to maximize the power in this innocent blood. And now, finally, we will taste immortality. Ayana rose from the shadows at the clearing's edge, her stolen rifle trained on Kachina's head. Put down the knife. The chanting stopped. 13 pairs of eyes turned toward her, but Ayana only had attention for Kachina and the baby in her arms. Ayana. Kachina's surprise seemed genuine. How lovely that you could join us. You're just in time to witness your daughter's greatest moment. Her greatest moment will be watching her mother tear your throat out, Ayana said conversationally. Put down the knife. Or what? You'll shoot me? Kachina smiled, a cold expression that transformed her beautiful face into something reptilian. With your baby in my arms? I don't think so. She was right, and they both knew it. Ayana couldn't risk a shot with her daughter so close. But she could get closer. You've been planning this since the beginning, Ayana said, taking a careful step into the clearing. The whole relationship with Chayton, the engagement, the pregnancy timing, all of it was for this moment. Chayton was so easy to manipulate, Kachina laughed. A little attention, some strategic seduction, and he was putty in my hands. He actually thought I loved him. Can you imagine? Where is he? Ayana asked, though part of her already knew. Here, Chayton's voice came from the shadows beyond the torches. He stepped into the light, his face haggard and sick with realization. Ayana, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. She told me it was just about the inheritance, Just about getting you out of the way. I never thought. You never thought about anything except money, Ayana cut him off coldly. You chose her over your own child. Live with that. Chayton flinched as if she'd struck him. I can help you. I can. You can stay out of my way. Ayana moved closer to the altar, her rifle never wavering from Kachina's position. Around the circle, the other cultists began to close in, but Ayana's focus remained laser-sharp on the woman holding her daughter. You know, Kachina said conversationally, I actually expected you to die in that fall. It would have been so much simpler if you'd just broken your neck like you were supposed to. But then that beast found you, and suddenly everything became so much more complicated. Takota saved my life. Takota claimed you like a piece of property, Kachina corrected. Do you really think that's love, Ayana? Being owned by a monster? Better a monster who protects what's his than a human who destroys it. Kachina's expression darkened. Touching. But ultimately irrelevant. The ritual must proceed, and your beast isn't here to save you this time. She raised the dagger again, and Ayana made her choice. She dropped the rifle and lunged forward, trusting in the predatory instincts flooding through the mating bond. The first cultist who tried to intercept her went down hard, his windpipe crushed by Ayana's elbow. The second got her knife between his ribs. But there were too many of them, and Kachina was backing toward the altar with the baby, the ceremonial dagger gleaming in the torchlight. Stop! Kachina shrieked. Come any closer and I'll cut her throat. Ayana froze, her daughter's cries piercing her heart. Around her, the remaining cultists closed in, weapons drawn. That's better, Kachina panted. Now, where were we? Oh yes, eternal life through innocent blood. She raised the dagger one final time, her eyes bright with fanatic fervor. Ayana screamed and lunged forward, knowing she was too far away, knowing she was too late. The massive gray wolf that exploded from the forest moved faster than thought, faster than possibility. Takota hit 3 cultists before his paws touched the ground, his jaws crushing bone and tearing flesh even as his body began the agonizing shift back to human form. But he was wounded, weakened by the new moon and blood loss. The remaining cultists swarmed him, and Ayana watched in horror as he went down under their combined weight. Kachina laughed triumphantly and brought the dagger down toward the baby's chest. Ayana moved. She didn't remember crossing the space between them. One moment she was 10 feet away, the next her hands were around Kachina's throat, squeezing with strength she didn't know she possessed. The dagger went flying as they crashed to the ground together, the baby tumbling safely onto the soft earth beside the altar. You want innocent blood? Ayana snarled, her fingers tightening around Kachina's windpipe. How about guilty blood instead? Kachina clawed at Ayana's hands, her nails drawing bloody furrows, but Ayana held on with the grip of death itself. Through the mating bond, she could feel Takota's savage approval, his predatory satisfaction at watching his mate claim her kill. This is for Chayton, Ayana whispered, increasing the pressure. This is for lying to me for 3 years. Kachina's eyes bulged, her face turning purple. This is for stealing my baby. Ayana's voice dropped to a deadly whisper. And this is for threatening my family. The sound of Kachina's neck snapping was surprisingly quiet. Ayana rose from the corpse, blood on her hands and murder in her heart, to find the clearing had gone silent. Takota stood among the bodies of the remaining cultists, his human form streaked with blood and claw marks but his golden eyes blazing with pride and possession. Is she hurt? He asked, moving toward the baby with careful steps. Ayana scooped up her daughter, checking her over with shaking hands. No. She's perfect. They didn't hurt her. Chayton stepped out from behind one of the torches, his face white with shock. Ayana, I don't. Ayana's voice could have cut glass. Don't say another word to me. Ever. But I tried to help. You tried to help after watching them nearly kill my daughter. After 3 years of being manipulated by a psychopath. After choosing money over family. Ayana looked at him with eyes that held no warmth, no forgiveness. You made your choice, Chayton. Now live with the consequences. Chayton opened his mouth to argue, then seemed to really see her for the first time. The blood on her hands, the predatory stillness in her posture, the way she stood beside Dakota like they were two halves of the same deadly whole. He backed away slowly, then turned and fled into the forest. Ayana watched him go without feeling. The woman who would have cried for him, who would have tried to save him from himself, was gone. What remained was harder, darker, infinitely more dangerous. How do you feel? Dakota asked softly, moving to stand beside her. Ayana looked around the clearing, at the bodies scattered like broken dolls, at the blood soaking into the earth, at the ceremonial altar that would never see another sacrifice. She should have felt horror, revulsion, guilt. Instead, she felt complete. Like myself, she said honestly. For the first time in my life, I feel like myself. Dakota's smile was sharp and satisfied. He gathered both Ayana and the baby into his arms, and Ayana melted into his strength, into the warmth of his approval and the security of his possession. They were covered in blood and surrounded by death, but Ayana had never felt safer. She'd found her true nature in violence and darkness, had discovered that sometimes the only way to protect innocence was to embrace the monster within. And as Dakota carried them both toward home, Ayana realized she wouldn't change a single moment of it. This was who she was meant to be, not Chayton's victim or anyone's prey, but an alpha's mate and a mother willing to kill for her child. The weak, frightened woman was dead. What remained was something far more dangerous. Chapter 8. Ayana woke to the sound of her daughter's laughter and the sight of Dakota teaching her to howl. 6 months had passed since the night at the ritual site, and their baby girl had grown into a bright, fearless toddler who thought her stepfather hung the moon. She sat on Dakota's lap in the main cabin's living room, throwing back her tiny head to make baby wolf sounds that sent the entire pack into delighted grins. Again, she demanded, clapping her chubby hands. Again, Papa. Papa. The word still made Ayana's heart catch. Dakota had claimed her daughter as his own the moment Ayana killed Kachina, and the bond between them was absolute. To this child, Chayton Whitehawk was nothing but a cautionary tale. Dakota was the only father she would ever know. Luna. Tala approached with the respectful tone that had replaced her initial skepticism. The morning patrol reports are ready for your review. Luna. Pack leader. Alpha's mate. Ayana had grown into the title like she'd been born for it, her human intuition combining with newfound predatory instincts to create a leader the pack both respected and feared. Any sign of him? Ayana asked, though she already knew the answer. Chayton was spotted near the southern border again, Tala confirmed. He didn't cross into our territory, but he's been watching from the ridge. Ayana nodded calmly, though satisfaction curled warm in her belly. Good. Let him watch. Let him see what he'd lost, what he'd thrown away for Kachina's lies and promises of easy money. Chayton was alive because Ayana allowed it. She'd convinced Dakota to spare him, not out of mercy but out of something far crueler, the desire to let him live with the weight of his choices. Death would have been a kindness. Living with the knowledge that he'd betrayed his own child, that he'd nearly destroyed everything that mattered, was justice. Should we increase patrols? Tala asked. No. Ayana's voice held the quiet authority that made pack members snap to attention. He won't cross the boundary line. He knows what will happen if he does. Dakota had made that consequence very clear during their last encounter. Chayton was allowed to exist on the condition that he never tried to contact Ayana or claim any parental rights to the daughter he'd helped endanger. One attempt to violate that exile, and the pack would hunt him down like the traitor he was. As you wish, Luna. Tala bowed slightly and withdrew, leaving Ayana to watch her mate and daughter continue their howling lesson. The domestic scene should have felt surreal, a supernatural alpha playing with a human child in a cabin deep in werewolf territory. Instead, it felt like coming home. Ayana's hand drifted to her stomach, where the early signs of her second pregnancy were just beginning to show. This child would be different, half werewolf, born to an alpha's bloodline, destined for power that her first daughter would never possess. But Ayana would love them equally, would kill for them with the same savage devotion. Hungry, little mate? Takota's voice drew her attention. He'd settled their daughter in her playpen and was crossing the room with that predatory grace that still made Ayana's pulse quicken. Always, Ayana admitted, accepting the plate of food he offered. The baby seems to have quite an appetite. Takota's hand settled on her waist, his thumbs tracing the slight curve of her belly with possessive satisfaction. Strong pup. Like its mother. Like its father, Ayana corrected, leaning into his touch. 6 months ago, she would have recoiled from such blatant ownership. Now, it felt like safety, like belonging to something powerful enough to protect what mattered most. The mating bond had evolved from unwanted intrusion to cherished connection, linking them so completely that Ayana couldn't imagine existing without it. The Pack Council wants to discuss expansion plans, Takota said, his voice dropping to that rumble that made her bones vibrate. Our territory could support twice the current population, and several lone wolves have requested sanctuary. What's your instinct? Ayana asked, though she was already analyzing the tactical implications. More pack members meant better protection but also more potential for internal conflict. Accept the ones with useful skills. Reject the rest. Takota's golden eyes met hers. Your thoughts? The fact that he asked, that he valued her judgment enough to make pack decisions together, still amazed her sometimes. Ayana Blackfeather, the naive human who'd trusted the wrong man, would never have been capable of such leadership. But Ayana Blackfeather was dead, replaced by something harder and infinitely more dangerous. I want to interview them personally, she decided. Anyone joining this pack needs to understand that loyalty isn't optional. After Chenoa's betrayal. They'd found Chenoa's body 3 days after the ritual site massacre, torn apart by something with very large teeth. The pack whispered that it had been Takota, finally extracting justice for her treachery. Ayana had never asked for confirmation, and Takota had never offered it. Some truths were better left unspoken. Of course, Takota agreed. We protect our own. Always. Their daughter's babbling drew their attention back to the playpen, where she was attempting to stack blocks with serious concentration. Ayana watched her with the fierce love that had driven her to kill for this child, to embrace violence and darkness without hesitation. Do you ever miss it? Takota asked quietly. Your old life? Ayana considered the question seriously. Did she miss the woman who'd trusted Chaitan's lies? Who'd believed in fairness and justice and the basic goodness of people? Who'd thought monsters only existed in fairy tales? No, she said honestly. That woman was weak. Naive. She would have gotten our daughter killed. And this woman? Ayana smiled, the expression sharp and predatory. This woman knows exactly what she's capable of. As if summoned by their conversation, a knock came at the door. Tala entered again, her expression troubled. Luna, there's a situation at the border. A woman claiming to be Chaitan's new girlfriend. She says she has information about another cult cell operating in the city. Ayana felt Takota's instant tension, the way his protective instincts flared at any potential threat to their family. Through the mating bond, she could sense his readiness to kill anyone who endangered what was his. Bring her to the interrogation room, Ayana decided. Full security protocols. And Tala? If this is some kind of trap. She dies screaming, Tala finished with grim satisfaction. Understood, Luna. After Tala left, Takota pulled Ayana closer, his arms encircling her and their unborn child with possessive protectiveness. If Chaitan sent her, he began. Then we'll deal with it, Ayana cut him off calmly. Together. Like we always do. The certainty in her voice seemed to settle something in Takota. His tension eased, replaced by the deep satisfaction of an alpha whose mate could handle any threat. This was what Ayana had gained in exchange for her human morality, a partner who would burn the world for her, a pack that would die before allowing harm to her children, a strength she'd never known she possessed. She'd traded fairness for justice, mercy for protection, naive trust for bonds forged in blood and violence. And she wouldn't change a single moment of it. Their daughter looked up from her blocks and reached for Ayana with pudgy arms. "Mama." Ayana scooped her up, breathing in that sweet baby scent that had driven her to murder and would again if necessary. This child would grow up knowing she was protected by wolves, loved by an alpha, defended by a mother who'd killed with her bare hands. She would never be the victim Ayana had once been. "We should check on this new development," Dakota said, though his tone suggested he'd rather stay here in their domestic sanctuary. In a moment, Ayana murmured, settling their daughter on her hip while Dakota's hands spanned her waist. "Let me enjoy this first." This, their family, built on blood and violence and unbreakable bonds. Their pack, loyal unto death. Their territory, protected by predators who showed no mercy to those who threatened what they loved. Ayana had fallen off a cliff as one woman and risen as another. She'd been claimed, marked, and transformed into something that fit perfectly beside an alpha werewolf. The naive girl who'd trusted Chayton was gone, replaced by a Luna who understood that sometimes the only way to protect innocence was to embrace the darkness. And as she stood there surrounded by everything she'd killed to protect, Ayana had never been happier. The weak woman was dead. What remained was forever claimed, forever protected, forever loved by a monster who'd made her into his perfect, deadly mate. And Ayana wouldn't have it any other way. Epilogue. 2 years later. Ayana smiled as she watched her 4-year-old daughter Winona chase fireflies in the meadow behind their cabin, her delighted squeals echoing across the mountain valley. Beside her on the porch swing, Dakota held their 18-month-old son Connor, who was attempting to catch the glowing insects with chubby hands and frustrated baby growls. "Mama, Papa, look." Winona called out, cupping her hands carefully around a captured firefly. "I got one." "Beautiful, little flower," Dakota called back, his voice warm with paternal pride. "Now let it go so it can find its family." Winona opened her hands with ceremonial seriousness, watching the firefly dance away into the growing dusk. At 4, she was already showing signs of the keen intelligence and fierce protective instincts that would serve her well in pack life, though she remained completely human. It didn't matter to Dakota, or to the pack, for that matter. She was the alpha's daughter in every way that counted. Connor, on the other hand, had inherited his father's supernatural gifts in full measure. Even at 18 months, his golden eyes could track movement no human child should be able to see, and Ayana had caught him having what appeared to be serious conversations with the pack's wolves. Just yesterday, she'd found him napping curled up with 3 full-grown werewolves who treated him like the precious pup he was. "He's going to shift early," Ayana said, settling more comfortably against Dakota's shoulder. "Tala thinks maybe by his 2nd birthday." "Are you worried?" Dakota asked, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Ayana considered the question. 2 years ago, the thought of her baby transforming into a wolf would have terrified her. Now, it just felt like another milestone to prepare for. "No," she said honestly. "He'll have the whole pack to guide him." "And you?" Dakota's arm tightened around her, his contentment flowing through their bond like warm honey. The mating mark on her neck had long since healed into a silver scar that caught the light, but the connection between them had only grown stronger. What had begun as supernatural compulsion had evolved into something deeper, genuine love, partnership, and absolute trust. "Ayana," Winona called, running back toward the porch. "Can you tell us the story about how you and Papa met?" Ayana exchanged an amused look with Dakota. Their daughter's favorite bedtime story was a heavily edited version of those first dramatic days: brave Mama falling off a cliff, strong Papa rescuing her, bad people trying to hurt baby Winona until Mama and Papa sent them away forever. After Connor's bath, Ayana promised. "And only if you help me get him ready for bed." "I will." Winona scrambled up the porch steps, her energy seemingly endless despite the long day of playing. As they moved inside to begin the evening routine, Ayana felt the familiar sense of rightness that had replaced the chaos of her former life. Their cabin had expanded over the years, growing from the single room where she'd first awakened as Dakota's made into a warm family home filled with children's laughter and the comfortable sounds of pack life. The kitchen smelled of Tala's homemade bread and the wildflower honey the pack harvested from their mountain apiaries. Children's artwork covered the refrigerator, Winona's careful drawings of the family and Connor's enthusiastic scribbles. A high chair sat beside the dining table where pack members often gathered for informal meals, and toy wolves were scattered across the living room floor. It looked like any normal family home, if you ignored the silver ammunition stored in the gun safe and the territorial maps marked with patrol routes hanging in Dakota's study. "Bath time, little moon," Dakota said, scooping Connor up as the toddler made a break for the toy box. "Your sister's waiting." Connor's response was a happy babble that sounded suspiciously like a wolf pup's yip. Winona giggled and took his hand, leading him toward the bathroom with the serious responsibility of an older sister. Ayana followed, settling on the bathroom floor to supervise while Dakota ran the bath. This was her favorite time of day, the quiet domestic moments when they were just a family, when the weight of pack leadership and territorial protection faded into the background. "Papa's turn to tell the story tonight," Ayana announced as Dakota lifted Connor into the warm water. "Really?" Winona's eyes went wide. She preferred Dakota's versions, which included more dramatic sound effects and occasional glimpses of his golden wolf eyes. "Really," Dakota confirmed, his voice taking on the storytelling cadence that both children loved. "Once upon a time, there was a brave mama who lived with very mean people." As Dakota spun their origin story into something magical rather than traumatic, Ayana found herself remembering the woman she'd been before that night on the cliff. Chayden's Ayana had been someone who believed in fairness, who trusted too easily, who thought love meant accepting crumbs and being grateful for them. This Ayana, Dakota's Ayana, knew better. Love was fierce protection and absolute devotion. Love was choosing your family and fighting for them without mercy. Love was building something strong enough to weather any storm. And they all lived happily ever after, Dakota finished, lifting a clean, sleepy Connor from the bath. The end. Winona cheered, then grew thoughtful. "Papa, what happened to the bad man? The one who tried to hurt Mama?" Ayana's hand found Dakota's, their fingers intertwining automatically. Chayden had stopped his border vigils about a year ago, finally accepting that his exile was permanent. Last they'd heard, he'd moved across the country and married a woman who didn't know about his past. Ayana felt nothing but mild curiosity about his fate now. He was simply irrelevant to the life she'd built. "The bad man learned that actions have consequences," Dakota said carefully. "He has to live far away now, where he can think about the choices he made." "Good," Winona said with satisfaction. "Bad people shouldn't get to hurt families." "No, they shouldn't," Ayana agreed, pressing a kiss to her daughter's forehead. "That's why we have Papa and the pack to keep us safe." After the children were settled in their beds, Connor in his crib and Winona in her big girl bed covered with a quilt Tala had made depicting running wolves, Ayana and Dakota stepped onto their bedroom balcony to enjoy the mountain night. The pack's territory stretched below them, peaceful under the star-scattered sky. Patrol lights moved in the distance, the comforting rhythm of werewolves protecting their own. Ayana could sense the pack through her bond with Dakota, their contentment, their vigilance, their absolute loyalty to the family they'd all helped raise. "Any regrets?" Dakota asked quietly, the question he'd asked her many times over the past 2 years. Ayana leaned against the railing, considering. Did she regret the naive woman who'd believed Chayden's lies? The gentle soul who'd thought the world was fundamentally fair? The trusting heart that had nearly gotten her daughter killed? "Only one," she said finally. Dakota's tension was immediate, flowing through their bond like ice water. "What?" Ayana turned to face him, seeing the concern in his golden eyes, the readiness to fix whatever was wrong. This man who'd claimed her without permission had become someone who'd move mountains if she asked. "I regret that it took me so long to find you," she said softly. "To find this life. To become who I was meant to be." Dakota's relief was palpable, followed quickly by the deep satisfaction that always filled him when she chose him, chose this life, chose their family over the human world she'd left behind. "You found me exactly when you were supposed to," he said, pulling her into his arms. "When you needed me most. When our children needed us both." Ayana melted into his embrace, still amazed by how perfectly she fit against him. The mating bond hummed between them, but it was more than supernatural connection now. it was partnership forged in crisis, love built on shared purpose, trust earned through countless moments just like this one. "I love you," she whispered against his chest, the words as natural as breathing. "Forever, little mate," Dakota murmured into her hair. "Forever and always." From inside the house came the soft sound of Connor stirring in his sleep, followed by Winona's gentle voice singing him back to dreams, a lullaby Tala had taught her about brave wolves and mountain homes. Ayana smiled, listening to her daughter's sweet voice carrying across the night air. This was what she'd fought for, killed for, transformed herself to protect. Not just survival, but this, love and laughter, bedtime stories and firefly chases, a family bound by choice rather than obligation. The woman who'd fallen off that cliff had been broken, lost, betrayed by everyone she'd trusted. But sometimes, Ayana thought as Dakota's arms tightened around her, you had to fall completely apart before you could build something unbreakable. And what they'd built together, their love, their family, their pack, was unbreakable indeed. Above them, the moon shone down on the mountain territory where wolves ran free and children played safely, and Aluna who'd once been human protected her own with the fierce devotion of a mother wolf. Ayana had found her pack, her purpose, her place in the world. She was exactly where she belonged.